The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ. Less than 24 hours. And we will be in the middle of the melee known as the 2016 general election for president.
Then afterwards comes the revolt.
Exactly. First, I want to reach out to our new viewers on tablenote.com, TAABLE note.com. We are now being carried by them. And also on May Theme. They are a Vietnamese station. We are being carried now in Vietnam. So I wonder where our viewership is coming from.
They all want to see how well our government is working, and this presidential election is really amplifying it throughout the world.
Well, I'm telling you now, if I get an email from Jun Yoon, I'm out of here. So, you know, it's amazing. I mean, many people have already read The Weekend Flush. It went out early this weekend because the clock change got me all messed up. And I just said, I'm going to send it out early. After proofreading it about 12 times, there was still errors, and I said, I'm done. But a couple of major issues came up, and we have to save time towards the end of the program for the questions that are on the ballot for people who haven't voted yet, who go in tomorrow. But Tuesday and Wednesday, they're going to be setting the tax factor. Now, the tax factor can be set at 1.00. That means that the tax rate is equal to both sides, residential and commercial. Every year, he who walks across the river goes in front of the city council and begs, borrows, steals, does whatever he needs to do to have the city council lower that tax factor rate. The closer it is to 1, the higher it is for the residences. The higher it is, or the closer it is to 1.75, which is the maximum tax factor, okay, the lower it is for the residents. It used to be 1.70. Last year, they downed it to 1.69, giving the businesses another break. Don't you think the businesses get enough breaks? Every one of them get a TIF.
Yeah, and not only that, CJ, look, if it's absurd because, number one, all these fee increases and stuff like that are burdened now, they continue. You know, when is our council, and I'm calling you again, you're a pack of clowns and you don't know anything that's, you know, you don't know basic economics, and I want to hear about Keynesian economics. And, you know, the bottom line is that nothing helps the economy and business in Fall River except bringing people in who actually have money to spend. These businesses that you're giving a lower tax factor to, all you're doing is delaying the inevitable that they're going to close ultimately, or making the few in the city that are profit making, you're giving them more of a profit. You're letting them make more money while you allow the taxpayers to make less money by stealing every dime you can. Giving them lower taxes doesn't bring businesses in either. Million, you're full of crap. You've been full of crap. You've been doing this for a decade or more. Running in front of the council and making these ridiculous assertions that somehow we're going to stimulate the economy by lowering the tax factor on businesses. That's not going to happen. Because if that was the fact, we would have more businesses than Newton, because Newton's tax factor is higher. New Bedford's tax factor on businesses is higher. Virtually everybody's tax factor is higher than Fall River. And what does that What does that result in? Fall River having the fewest businesses of any city of its size in the Commonwealth. Newton has a higher tax factor and have 10,000 more businesses than we do, based on the United States Census Bureau statistics. Well, how is that possible if the Messiah is correct? Those 10,000 businesses should be all pulling up stakes and running down to the fifth worst city and the poorest city in the Commonwealth. Why don't they come here? Well, it's real simple. Newton has the highest household income and the highest per capita income of any city of our size in the state of Massachusetts. And with money comes business, because with money comes consumers. Fall River doesn't have consumers. That's the reason Walmart charges the most. This is this is what really enrages me, that the people of this city are not storming that place. How long are you going to let some guy that lives in Somerset or Swansea, that's been singing the same song for 10 years in front of that council, and that gutless council who's going to go, I don't want to be portrayed as being anti-business. You're right. You're not anti-business. You're anti-taxpayer. You're anti-taxpayer. You keep making their life easier and our life harder. When are you going to get sick of this? The rest of the country nominated Donald Trump. Meet the Press had a big discussion about the chaos afterwards, because the people are galvanized in this country. There are the people who made Donald Trump the nominee for the Republican Party are sick and tired of the lying government that we have. The disingenuous government that talks about caring about the working man and the taxpayer and does nothing but screw them every which way but loose. I'm not going to go to the council meeting and talk for 2 minutes and 42 seconds, and then Melian gets up there and he doesn't even live in the city. He doesn't pay any damn taxes, and he'll get as long as he wants because he's Rob Melian, and he represents the Chamber of Commerce, most of whom don't live in the city. Most of the businessmen don't live in the city. Let's give them another tax break and screw the taxpayer. Every single city councilor that votes to lower the business tax rate and screw the taxpayer after getting tax increases, fee increases on the taxpayer, you have no regard at all for the fact that Fall River, as it said in that article in Wall Street, it has no money, it has high prices. And I don't want to hear the comparisons with Newton and say, oh, yeah, well, you know, their tax rate, well, actually their tax rate's lower, but the houses are valued at more, so they're going to pay more. But it's a fact of life. Let's look at it. An $8 hamburger is unaffordable for a guy that's got $2 in his pocket. You got to go and get the dollar menu at McDonald's. This is what Fall River is. And that's what the Wall Street Journal, which, by the way, has a pretty good idea of economics. That's why they rated Fall River so poorly, because we have higher costs and proportionately it's far more expensive, even though the price may be lower than it is in a place. But if you're making $20,000 and something is a few cents less than it is in Newton, and the average income in Newton is $113,000, which is, what, I don't know, like 8 times more? You know, and it's like, you know, they're making what an entire block. The average household income in Newton's what basically a city block in Fall River makes for a household income. But nobody can see that. These geniuses at the council that look out through those rose-colored glasses, the thickness of 17 Coke bottles stacked on top of each other, and see a thriving metropolis. What's wrong with this city? Why is the city continuing to get worse? Why are we always out of money? Because they never stop spending our money, taxing us, while they give everybody else a free ride. Every business gets a TIF or a tax break. And you know what we get? We get increases in everything to fund their folly. That's the end of my rant.
Taxpayer!
Should be double screw you, taxpayer.
There it is.
Screw you, taxpayer!
Thank you. But that, but that's
But
the problem.
while we're going to move on, because again, we got to get this stuff out there. Let's look at the fact that they're going to take up a new Chiefs contract, and you can go for hours on that. So I'm gonna, let's try to contain the time frame.
No.
But I mean, do I think he's unqualified? I'm not going to say he's unqualified. I don't know what his background is. You have a better idea of his qualifications than I do. But number one, this contract is signed to take effect on November 8th. Guess what? Again, signing a contract before the funding is in place. City Council hasn't approved it. Oh, wait a minute. We got a whole bunch of things that the City Council hasn't approved. We just proved that at our last show.
But remember, the city council has no power. It has the power to actually nullify this contract, just as when a collective bargaining agreement's agreed to. It's agreed to between the mayor and the bargaining unit.
That's right.
And if the city council doesn't fund it, guess what? It's done.
It's done.
Off. And that's what happened in Attleboro. We say that all the time, but it did happen.
Exactly.
There are case precedents. So you're right. They signed it. And as far as John Lynch, I know John Lynch very well. Good man. He came up through the ranks. He's very well qualified. And as are all of other candidates, they weren't an appointee like Coogan. It went from lieutenant to chief. They worked their way up through the ranks. They worked in the car. They fought fires. They came up through the ranks, and they've paid their dues.
That's right.
And all of them. But that doesn't change the fact that they violated the collective bargaining agreement with this contract and what they've done.
And they did it with they did it with Viveris too.
They bought them out in spite of it's a conflict. The contract clearly states that you only get that buyout if you retire or die. All the other chiefs prior to Viveris. Now, this is a great classic example of the way the city minds talk. I got a bunch of calls on this. I called the city councilor. He went down to talk to Kathy, and Kathy says, "Oh yeah, we did it. We started with Viveris because we're going to save a few dollars. We can buy them all out at deputy chief's pay instead of buying them out later at chief's salary." Well, they're going to probably save, I don't know, $8,000, $10,000. Okay, you're going to save that, and they're not worried about how much they pay them. But they're going to save chump change. But they're
Right.
going to violate a collective bargaining agreement. You can't. Why are they going to lose? Because, and if somebody in that union decides to make a stink out of this, if somebody decides to file something, the union, number one, shouldn't have allowed it because, number one, it's prohibited to bargain with an individual. John Lynch has every right to bargain his contract as fire chief. However, he does not have the right to exercise a section of the collective bargaining agreement of which he's no longer going to be a member of and waive it and then allow to get a benefit in that contract which no longer applies to him without going through the union. Because if you open up the contract, and any union contract in this city, either the first or second paragraph in that contract will say, this collective bargaining agreement is between the city of Fall River, hereinafter referred to as the city, and, in this case, Local 1314, International Association of Firefighters, hereafter referred to as the union. And Local 1314 is the sole and only bargaining unit for all uniformed firefighters. Once John Lynch becomes the chief, he's no longer in that bargaining unit. He can do anything he wants. He can take that language and say, I want to be bought out like all the other chiefs did, the same way that the people in the bargaining unit did. But they don't have a right to take a section of the contract that's very clear that says, you get this buyout only when you die or you retire. He's not retired. He's still on the Fall River Fire Department. He's moved from a bargaining unit employee to a non-bargaining unit employee, and normally the fire chief's contracts mirror the benefits in the collective bargaining agreement. All the other chiefs carried over their buyout provisions. So here again, the city is, we're going to save a few $1,000s. Well, you are. But if somebody decides to take you to court or the Labor Relations Commission or arbitration, you're going to lose. Because not only are you violating the wording by giving somebody who didn't retire a buyout, you're violating the provision that says you are prohibited from bypassing the union and dealing with individuals or groups. You can only bargain any element of that contract and its applicability with Local 1314's bargaining committee, period.
You know, I think Jason Burns may be abdicating his responsibility as president of the union because he's not, I haven't heard him make a stink about this yet. In either case, with Viveris or with Lynch now. And maybe that's because he doesn't want to make any waves and, lose his job or something. I don't know.
Well, he doesn't want the chief to get aggravated, the new chief, because he's going to say, oh, look, you're trying to screw me. No, I'm not trying to screw you. You should get what every other chief before you got.
Right.
Viveris went in the tank for it. Now he's going to get bought out. Why shouldn't he get bought out the way Louis Shea did, the way Tom Moore did, the way Dave Thibodeau did, the way Eddie Dawson did? They got bought out at chief's rate. So what you do is, okay, that's a benefit that you got. I'm not going to give up that benefit to take the chief's job. I'm not going to take it. So now they said, okay, now he's not going to get 2 golden parachutes, only get 1. But the thing is, that's the way it's always been done. And if the city wants to negotiate that and say, well, we don't want to pay him at chief's rate, chief was not going to get bought out, fine. But do it the right way, which they never do. Do it the way you're legally obligated to do. Go to the union and say, we want to take that wording and put in an addition about when somebody becomes chief of the department and sign a legally negotiated side letter and then put it in the next collective bargaining agreement. That's the correct way to do it. But none of these idiots know anything about collective bargaining. Nobody did. Years ago when we had Bob Connors, this crap wouldn't have happened because he would have said, well, you can't do this. Something's going to be done to be it, because he understood contract language because he was on the labor side. But now our city doesn't, we got a bunch of buffoons running the show.
Well, and this is just a given. I mean, this is just getting nauseating at this point. And again, I'm not against Chief Lynch getting his buyout but like you said, do it legally. Do it the way it's supposed to be done. Why? I'm so sick and tired of hearing this administration saying, well, this is how we're doing it. We've always done it this way. Just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it was the right way.
You're going to save money. That's what they all say.
Yeah.
Look how much money I have. Now he's going to say, well, we're doing this to save money. But guess what, Jazel? Your pursuit of saving a few dollars does not exempt you from abiding by the law, the collective bargaining law. This is a contractual provision. And because you have nobody that understands collective bargaining at all in this city, Kathy Ann doesn't have a clue about 150E. No. Mary Sahadi doesn't have a clue. None of them do. They just think that they're the supreme and they can do it. And so it's going to cost more. Because if somebody decides to make an issue out of this, you will lose, just as you've already lost with the TCM.
Yeah.
And you'll lose again because you don't follow the law. And I don't care what, Norman Nosock says, you have to follow the law.
Well, this is the problem. And now, we're looking at the tax factor, which we know the felonious 5 will approve because whatever the felonious 1 on the 6th floor wants to do, they do. They fall in lockstep. Okay? And what the people need to remember is if they vote for a tax factor any lower than it currently is, they're not being pro-business. They're being anti-taxpayer.
Exactly.
They're saying that your money doesn't mean anything to you. It means it to us.
And I want one city councilor to ask one question when the Messiah goes, even though we know that it doesn't work. Low and
Right.
I want one councilor, and I know that the fearsome five will not ask it because they'll fawn all over Melian and like he's the Messiah, even though he's been in charge of the he's been in charge of the Chamber of Commerce for a very long time, and we haven't seen much positive movement in our economy and in our business. So, but let's ask this one of you, be it Ray Mitchell or Richard Cabaceres or Cliff Ponte, somebody ask somebody from the city. Don't expect an accurate answer. So, somebody ask them that lowering this tax factor will save how much money for the business and put how much money on the taxpayer side of the ledger.
Well, they always misrepresent that too. Oh, it's only going to be 2 cents more, 3 cents more. No, it's 2 cents, 3 cents per 1,000 or per 100.
Yeah,
and, it was just like the water bill.
Taxpayer in this. Let's get a big number because that's the old con. It's just like marketing.
Yeah.
You sell something for $9.99. It's $10.
Right.
But then you don't see that other number in front of it.
Right.
Look, it's only $9.99. It's not $10. I got to buy that.
Yeah.
So they always, when they start giving you these little numbers. It's a
that
political
should be the red
trick.
flag.
It's a political trick. There's a red flag. Because when they say, oh, this only, like the CPA, oh, this only means like $1.10 on the tax rate.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? How much money have they given out now? They've got millions of dollars. That $1.10 on everybody's tax rate per thousand, as you said, CJ, translates into millions of dollars. When they got enough money to give somebody $400,000 for an air conditioning unit, which arguably may be the most expensive air conditioning unit for a building
I think
of
they're
that
keeping
size
meat
ever
there for
known to
Peter
man.
Luger's.
But this is, like you said, taxpayer, wake up, red flag, get a bottom line figure. How much money is going to be removed from the aggregate taxes of the business community and shifted over to the beleaguered taxpayer?
But yeah, and you'll never get that answer. But let's look at this real quickly for a second so people understand. Remember the water and sewer fees? It's only going to be pennies. It's only going to be pennies for each of them. Well, guess what? I had a 50% increase in my water bill. 50%. It was only pennies. I'm using the same amount of water, but it was only pennies.
A lot of pennies.
A lot of pennies. But they have over $1 million in free cash in the enterprise funds for water and sewer. I think it's 1.3 million, to be honest. So were those pennies actually necessary? Were those pennies actually necessary?
Yeah, that's how you end up at the end of the year with free cash.
That's right.
See, that's why Jaisel can say, look how much money I saved. My budget is right on target. You see how much money? Well, guess what? That wasn't even your budget.
That's right. Nitwits.
It was Sutter's budget.
That's right. And that shows Sutter overtaxed us.
That's right.
So when your budget return comes back in the free cash in October, just before the election, let's see how close you came to zero free cash. Because you should be aiming for zero free cash, which means your zero-based budgeting was accurate. You didn't overtax, you didn't overspend, you spent on budget. So you should go out with nothing and come in with nothing. That's the way it works. Zero base. But we know zero base doesn't actually exist. So think about it, city councilors. $5.2 million in free cash from last year's budget. You overtaxed everyone. You've already got $1 million shortfall in pay-as-you-throw. You're spending millions of dollars to re-educate a populace that doesn't care. You know where that recycling data that you mailed me went? I took it from the mail and into the trash because I've seen the same paperwork 3 times. You must have got a great deal on printing. You must have, because guess what? I didn't read it because I read it the first time. I knew what it was going to say. And the city council has made this more difficult. One of your biggest costs is contamination, the majority of which is t-shirt bags. Guess what? Cities and towns across the Commonwealth, across the state of Rhode Island, across Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Minnesota, California have outlawed t-shirt bags. How come it works everywhere else, but we can't do it in Fall River?
I guess the answer to that question is the same thing as why do some communities get paid for their recyclables and we have to pay to get rid of them.
I know.
So, I mean, nothing seems to work in Fall River, especially its government. So this is the reason, because nobody ever asks the tough questions. Nobody ever holds any administration accountable. And as you said, zero-based budget. Yeah, there can never be more money spent than in a zero-based budget, but you can have some excess at the end of the year, because if you have people who retire and the position isn't filled for a few months or maybe almost the entire year, you're going to have that salary and all the benefits and, the Blue Cross. You're going to have money. But at the end of the year, that money is technically not free cash. It's leftover cash.
That's right.
Now you can turn it over into free cash, but that's not something that like you say like, oh, because technically if you generated that kind of money in free cash, you'd have it every year. And we don't know what we're going to have. That's the reason you don't replace. It's not extra money. It's money that you got from not providing enough firefighters or enough DCM workers. When people retire, you wait months to replace them, or you don't replace them at all for the entire calendar year to save their salaries. And, overestimations of bills, which is overtaxation, by the way.
Or transfer money from one account to somebody else's salary that was a political whore.
So it's the whole thing is just a big giant, it's three-card Willie with the fast shuffle.
Yeah, but this is what the voter needs to understand. This is what the taxpayer needs to accept, needs to address, okay? You have a couple of people on the city council who intend to run for mayor, okay? Let's look at this very clearly. If they vote in any way, shape, or form to decrease the tax factor, giving the businesses another discount, don't even run. Don't even run. We already know the mayor's asking for that discount. Because after all, he's got people out there like Carl's Collision who gave him 60 grand. 60 grand. We got that in sworn testimony. In sworn testimony. 60 grand buys you a lot of political favors. Okay? And let's remember something else. Okay? This money with the free cash, which in my opinion is overtaxation, also equates to another issue that you have. And that's the fact that when he was on the city council, because he wants to take claim for this free cash, his success, fine. Because this came when you were on the city council. Guess what? You agreed to overtax the populace. You agreed to screw the taxpayer. That's what you did. That's what you did. That's what you do. Now, one last thing, because we only have a minute and a few seconds left here. Fall River has a residency requirement. Now, Chief Lynch has said publicly and in private conversations that if he ever had to establish residency in Fall River, he would quit the department. Now, we have a police chief currently that lives in Swansea. We never enforced this 18-month rule, thank you very much, City Council and Linda Pereira, on the residency requirement. Now, with this buyout, Chief Lynch may no longer be covered by that because it's a new job, because he's no longer in the collective bargaining unit. Therefore, the grandfather clause doesn't apply. So if that's the case, Chief Lynch, you're going to move to Fall River? And remember, this guy's going to be making 6 times plus the average salary of a citizen in Fall River. This is where your taxpayer dollars are going. We had a statement many moons ago. Pride citywide. Guess what we got instead? Nothing.
Don't forget to vote. Vote early, vote often, as they say in Chicago, but vote. Regardless of the outcome, we will be here Wednesday. To talk about it. We may know who the President of the United States is, much to all our chagrin.